initially, when you thought of tokens, coins, stable coins, you will thought that you'll think about of being involved in the trading ecosystem, because those kind of items. And then when you think of minting, NFT, this funny JPEGs and stuff, you will think that you need to own an NFT and you need to be in the marketplaces, right? So these are the misconceptions. Sometimes we don't need to have those items on hand. We just need to use the application to understand what it is. And this, I think, is something that we discussed earlier about being a utility driven project than a very technical driven project. We just need to
Yeah, and
use it, right?
in
And
parts it
dive
also
into it.
has to do with the mainstream media and how they report, like how they don't manage to separate at all, like blockchain from DeFi and crypto hype. And of course they like to report on sort of big numbers, big crashes. So they always like, if there's a big Bitcoin crash, let's report about it. If there is like, the next Bitcoin hype, let's report about it. But the mainstream media would very seldomly report about, hey, here's this company that really has a valid use case using the technology. That's like advanced stuff. Most mainstream media articles just basically promote these markets and the whole fear of missing out and all that. And so that's very
Correct.
natural that you would come into this space and think, well, what should I try? Obviously, I should try trading something, because that's what it's all about, right? That's what they all write about. And, winning money, making more money, finding someone else that pays more later. That's what it's all about.
Yes. So yeah, I'm so happy to give my questions to you firsthand and understand what Centi is in depth.
Good day, world. Welcome to Be in the Moment. Today, we are delighted to reunite online in the virtual world after having networked in person live at the London Blockchain Conference. Welcome back together again, Krez of the Bitcoin Association, and our most special guest today, Bernhard Müller, Chairman and leader of Centi, a fabulous fintech solution that is on the leading edge of the global financial system. Welcome to Be in the Moment with us, Bernhard.
Thank you, Rory. Thank you, Chris. Pleased to be here.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
so
we were
excited for
all
this.
together. Right. So, Chris, when did you return home? Have you returned home already from London?
Yeah, so I traveled 10 p.m. London time Sunday, and then I arrived Tuesday in the Philippines. That's
Wow.
crazy, right? I
A
was
long
trying to
flight.
analyze the mathematics behind it with all the stopover and the region, my region. I was like, wow, that was a fantastic experience. So if you can hear, I'm kind of recovering my voice now, but the event was so intense. It's like we have two stages, and you both want to have you kind of want to be in the two different places at the same time, and you can pick, right? And you cannot finish one speech and another because you just want to listen both. But so some friends of mine advised me to, hey, you can actually pick one and then watch the other one via recording on CoinGeek, and that's very smart. So okay, yeah, let's do that. And then yeah, so but Bitcoin SV is one of the most visited booths at the London Blockchain Conference. So my help is also needed in that to assess, and assist many visitors at the booth. So yeah, overall the event was just fantastic. Yeah, so as I was saying as well, Mr. Bernhard Müller. He was kind of like a celebrity. Everyone wants to talk to him. I was trying, to catch him like one time and another, but it's hard to catch a celebrity.
It
Everyone
is
just
indeed.
so when
And you're
when I
right,
when I
Okay,
he's
I'll
see
so
catch you
this,
next
tall.
time.
yeah, when I see this invitation, Rory, I was like, hey, yeah, let's do that, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
fabulous.
thank you for the invitation.
Right. Well, I just had to run up to Bernhard because I had seen his passion for flight in the past. He has the most interesting hobby of hang gliding. So I wanted to take the time to ask him about it. And you were
Sure.
so generous with me. And thank you for your time that day. So, yeah, give us a bit of an insight into how you developed your love of flight.
Oh, wow. Actually, my grandfather, from my mom's side, he was the first person to cross the Alps entirely on a glide plane. And my uncle at the time, when I was a kid, was a pilot, small, I think, Cessnas or Pipers. Can't remember exactly. I was too little. Um, and me and my brothers, we used to love, to build those radio-controlled cars. And because at the time it was really, for us at least, budget-wise and so on, it was not feasible to go into radio-controlled flight. But as time advanced, all of that stuff got cheaper, electric power and so on came up. So I was quite passionate about, sort of radio controlled flight for a time. It's actually quite difficult because you're not in the airplane, you're in the sort of third person. So let's say you fly upside down or you fly the curve or something, you have to kind of put your mind into that first person that is sitting inside the aircraft and manage the controls accordingly. And so, yeah, I ever had a sort of spleen for flight. And then actually about 2 years ago, I did my first tandem flight on a paraglider, and that really got me hooked.
Wow. And I imagine there must be a lot of hiking involved, right? You're hiking up a mountain.
Yes and no. So it depends where you do it. In Switzerland, a lot of these mountains that you see are actually accessible also by cable cars, by funicular railways, or other means of transport. But often you would, of course, hike then from up there somewhere else. I mean, the entire sport has a lot of disciplines. I mean, some people like to fly acro, or others do so-called hike and fly. That's what you're mentioning, or cross-country flying, where you try to cover as much distance as you can in a day. Then there's of course competitions in various categories, and I'm much more the sort of leisure flyer. I enjoy thermals, so I enjoy staying up. I enjoy getting high, and then also trying to get somewhere from where I am, but not in a competitive fashion.
Wow, that is so special.
And
And you're
actually, paragliding and entrepreneurship has a lot of things in common, mostly the risk management. It's all about risk management and being very agile, and sort of you can't stand still. Same in a business, you can't just say, oh, let's stop, hold, everyone has to stop what they're doing, because obviously your competition isn't sleeping and the market isn't sleeping. So you are in this sort of turbulent environment and have to find your way in that environment.
That's beautiful. Well, we look forward to your paper on that. Maybe you could give a master class.
I don't think I'll have time to write that paper because I'm already lacking time for a lot of other things I'd like to do.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. So, what are you so busy with these days? Now, first of all, let me introduce that I have a lot of experience since focusing on the Bitcoin SV ecosystem with point of sale, because I left my work in the corporate world to focus 100% on Bitcoin SV ecosystem, but I still had to pay the rent. So I worked in a lot of restaurants and used a lot of point of sales in different shops these past 3 years. And when Centi emerged, I was working a point of sale. And I felt so excited, as in, yes, that's right. This is exactly where we need to be. And I wonder, what was your journey into the ecosystem, and how is Centi a point of sale, but how is it more than a point of sale?
All right. So the journey, it's actually all related. So the journey into the ecosystem started in 2011, where a friend called me and he said, "You have to read this." It was an article in Spiegel Online, like a German bigger news outlet that already had a sort of pretty good online magazine at the time. And that was actually a really good article about Bitcoin. And I must say, this article, if you read it back today, and I went back several times and read it, it's much more compelling and much more in depth than a lot of Bitcoin articles you'll find in mainstream today. So it went into all the like technical things like, but hey, we're in the age of, BitTorrent, and why can't somebody just copy my money, when I spend it, and how does that all work, and how does it work that not, people can invent new money, and all these kind of questions that people don't really discuss so much anymore these days. It's more about speculation. Where does the price move? What did this banker say about Bitcoin or not, And what fascinated me from the get-go was really the utility and the speed in which it worked. And that, at a Bitcoin meetup or with friends, we could be, 8 people and sort of pass the Bitcoin around. I think in 2012, 13, there were the first mobile wallets, which actually allowed paying each other through like sort of QR codes or address scanning. All these apps were still not approved in the official app stores, but there were some ways to either install them or, it was a web-based app and so on. And we used those apps and we were really fascinated. And I actually started convincing the place where, where we held our Bitcoin meetup in to accept Bitcoin. And, that actually went really well until, sort of 2014, where it really started to become apparent that these transaction fees are getting higher and higher and nobody really wants to do anything about it. And some people think even this doesn't even have to scale, and it's not made for payments and whatnot. And obviously, the history that came then. But then in 2019, 18, 19, the time was sort of ripe, and my co-founder and business partner Rolf, who I know from way back, he started coming up. He actually worked in the payments industry, and he already had ideas in 2014, 15 at his employer to do these things that we're doing at Centi today. But obviously, his employer was one of these intermediaries with deep pockets, and also, to be honest, at that time, it already sort of became news that Bitcoin can only do 3 transactions a second. And every sort of serious, company in retail and so on, they would say, well, we need the entire capacity for ourselves. Well, what do we want to do with that? And so 2019 was really where the time was ripe. And I like to tell the story how he sort of approached me and said, "Hey, Bernhard, aren't you one of these crazy people that think blockchain can actually scale?" And I said, "Yeah, I am," because I was quite vocal at the time, sort of in Telegram groups and in the community also, to the dismay of others that sort of wanted to have this discussion not happening at all about big blocks and scaling Bitcoin. And so, I sort of exposed myself as one of these big blockers. And I actually got a lot of people that wrote to me and said, "Hey, so glad you take this viewpoint. It's really interesting to learn about this. I cannot publicly comment because, censorship and, how you can get silenced in certain communities if you say the wrong things." But yeah, I always felt that what Bitcoin is for. It's a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. It's made for micropayments, for casual payments. So to be honest, what we do at Centi in this regard, or the base functions we have, they're actually rather boring. They're just payments and micropayments, which is what was proposed right there and then, and what this system is actually for. And so for us, it was a no-brainer to then, once we realize now the technology is ready, now we have a chain that is committed to scaling, to stability, that is compliance compatible, and will not change the protocol all the time, which was already starting to happen at that time. We had blockchains that even were born specifically to change the protocol all the time. They would vote and whatnot, to kind of go with the flow or go with time. But actually, to build a business, that's not really that valuable. To build a business, you want something very stable. I always make the example of imagine Mark Zuckerberg would build Facebook on the internet, TCP/IP protocol, HTTP, and so on. And then cat pictures become very popular, and then the overlords of the internet will tell him, well, yeah, it's too large. You have to go to cat picture net now with those pictures because it's it's overflooding the network. We don't want to sell more bigger data connections. We don't want to sell like faster access to the data. So go on this other network, right? And then maybe on this other network one day, cat pictures would be too large and it would be videos, and then it's like, oh, now you need to go on cat video net, and now we're changing it. Nobody can build a business that way. The TCP/IP protocol these guys started building their companies on is still the same today as it was back then, and that's the value. Nobody wants to build on sand. It's not a good foundation, right? So I'm getting a bit on a tangent here, but back to Centi. So we founded Centi with the clear mind that we want to integrate into e-commerce and point of sales with payments powered by BSV. And of course, BSV payments are also accepted at Centi, and we love all the BSV community people going shopping with our merchants. We have a merchant list online, and it will be growing, or using our products for other things. But the actual design of the product is really not for those Bitcoiners. The actual design of the products is really for the merchants that, quite frankly, they just want to collect money and get money on their bank account or money to pay their salaries and suppliers at the end of the day. They don't really care about how it all works. And likewise, most consumers, they don't really care. They just want something that works and allows them to stay within the frame they're already thinking in. And native Bitcoin, or any cryptocurrency for that matter, is quite difficult for that, because nobody thinks in Dogecoin or Bitcoin or Ethereum. All consumer purchasing decisions are done in Swiss francs, US dollars, pounds, pesos, and so on. That's how people think. And for us, it was clear from the beginning that we would want to have a stable coin as well on Bitcoin SV, which can be used for these payments. And yeah, maybe we can talk. I stop here. There's a lot more to that journey and how we got there. For example, we had to develop the direct payment protocol to allow these payments to happen in tokens, and a lot more things. But I'll stop here and let you ask the next question, maybe.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
On your point, one thing I did notice in London is, here in America, $1 is $1, and folks may charge you $1. But in London and the UK, £1 is a pound, and folks might charge you £1. So I was really surprised when I saw something was costing £1, and I thought, oh, shouldn't it be in dollars? In fact, it was a massage. After I had a bit of a stiff neck from the airplane, so I went to the local massage parlor before I flew home. And on their sign, it was showing £1 per minute for the deep tissue massage.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I thought, oh, shouldn't it be like $1 per minute, like in the US? But then I thought, no, I'm in the UK, so it's £1 per minute. So it seems that, yes, that essential unit, or the widget of how we're thinking of the cost of things, is in our local currency. And it is in, as they say, the fiat of where we live. So I see what you mean. Our mindsets are focused on these dollars and not on sats. We hear so often of how things cost in sats. And even Joshua Hensley's recent video, he said that he thinks that's the future, that people will start to imagine or visualize the cost of things based on sats or satoshis.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, this might happen, that people actually start pricing stuff in their brains in Satoshis. Our assessment, and that's not what I hope for or what I wish for, that's just our business assessment, is that in the next 5 to 7 years, this will not happen. No, no sort of native cryptocurrency will manage to really enter into the mind of people in a way where they start thinking in that. And if it happens, and then it's most likely first going to be some sort of stable coin, where people think in that, because that's like easier for them, because like, oh, it's 1-to-1 to the dollar or to the pound, so I can think in that, that's fine. Really, also the volatility, of course, of native digital currency creates a huge problem. Everybody has to hedge against the volatility, have to sort of insure themselves. Oh, the money I collect now, if I maybe need it for something 2 days later, what will the value be? And ironically, we talk a lot in sort of cryptocurrency circles about central banks, about inflation, about price increases and economic stability and so on. And that's all, these discussions are all very valuable. But turns out that for commerce, people actually prefer a medium where they know, oh, it loses 10% of value each year, right? 10% inflation. Over a unit, they think, well, it might increase, 20-fold or whatever, but I just don't know. It could also be half or third, or even only 10%. And I just don't, I can't really calculate in it, because you don't know what its worth is tomorrow. Of course, global currencies like the pound and the dollar are also subject to market conditions and market volatility. But this volatility is, of course, factors lower than the volatility in digital currencies, because the markets are much more mature, they're much larger. So somebody buying or selling a few £1 million somewhere, you won't even see a tick in the market, because it's just gobbled up, the volume is so big. Where in certain digital currencies where the markets are thinner, the market is much more easily turned by a big actor buying large quantities or selling large quantities. Or also by news hype cycles, like, I don't know, Elon Musk's tweets about it. If Elon Musk tweets about the dollar or the pound, nothing happens. Yeah, if Elon Musk tweets about your crypto project, it's probably going to go 20-fold overnight.
Amazing. I have a question, because I'm so excited to jump right away into Centi.
Sure.
So, okay, so just a few months ago, like, you break the news about having your Centi stablecoin backup with the Swiss bank, right? So
Correct.
for like I think this is a great questions, like, what is it for us normal user, right? What do you mean about guarantee? If it collapses, will the Swiss bank give back the money, or at least have this deposit in return? Can you please
Yeah.
elaborate that, in a sense that, please think that I am someone newbie in the ecosystem, non-technical person, and I want to understand this thing. And since it says guaranteed by Swiss bank, I'm someone that is more interested to try it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, everyone, of course, not considering securities regulations and so on, but everyone can basically write, on a piece of paper and say, well, whoever holds this piece of paper, I owe them, $1 or £1, or in our case, 1 Swiss franc, right? Of course, there are certain regulations around it. Now, if you have a startup like Centi that exists now for 3 years, obviously people are going to think, well, can I trust this company with my money? Because money and payments, it's all about trust. Yeah, you can be the cheapest player, you can be the best player. It's all about trust. And whether other opinion leaders would recommend you. So, once you have the first 100 merchants like we have right now, we can point to these for every new merchant. We can say, hey, these guys already trust us. That's a huge benefit, but you have to, work your way up, so to speak. And the same is true, of course, with the stablecoin issuance. So in this case, what it means for you as a user is that there is a defined process, which you can read about in detail in our token terms, which are on our website, Centi.ch/CentiFranc. And there you can read in the token terms what would happen in case of a default of Centi. Again, we don't hope this happens. We don't plan for this to happen, but contracts are always made for unhappy days, right? What happens if something goes wrong? And there, you as a holder of this token, every consumer, every merchant is protected by the Swiss bank guarantee. Exactly, that's the website, Rory, of the Centi Franc, and there is a term document which is linked here, which is like a 22-page legal document that are really the terms of this token. So when you hold this token, we and you are bound by these terms. And the terms basically say you can come to us and get 1 Swiss franc for a Swiss franc. We could collect some fees and so on, but that's what it says. And then it says also, in case of a default, how you can actually get your money through the bankruptcy trustee and the bank. Now, that's of course still not the same as if, sort of the Swiss National Bank would issue this coin, or maybe, I don't know, a super large bank, let's exclude Credit Suisse maybe, would issue the coin. But you have the guarantee of a Swiss bank, and that's, Swiss banks are under a lot of scrutiny and regulatory control. And of course, it also guarantees you that, we basically don't YOLO with the money, because, obviously the bank is going to have their insurance, about how they make sure that they're not, the ones that have to pay the bill at the end. And so you can be sure that they're quite risk averse. Maybe I already went too deep. Essentially, it's a piece of paper in digital where we print on and say, you bring us this piece of paper, we give you 1 Swiss franc. And then, shall we fail to do that, then you can go to this Swiss bank. Does that explain it?
Yeah. Okay, so you're acting like some financial entity that actually back up with this huge bank, right? So my question is, so Centi also does KYC for their users?
So we are, of course, a financial service provider and a financial intermediary, and are also regulated as such. We do KYC checks, of course. However, on the consumer side, there are certain limits, monthly limits, in which we can sell and buy digital currency from you or to you, where we don't have to actually formally identify you. So similar to, when you go to an airport and you want to exchange some US dollars for euros, maybe because you're traveling. If you give them 200 US dollars and you say, I want euros, they will tell you how many euros you'll get. If you say yes, you give them the money, they give you the euros, they give you a receipt. They're not going to ask you for an ID. However, if you now come with $50,000, they definitely ask you for an ID. So there is, in each jurisdiction and so on, there are limits for these things. And so on the consumer side, we actually currently don't have a KYC. We plan to do that, once consumers want higher limits, once there's demand for making larger payments. But with the limits we are currently operating in, so the regular purchases, grocery purchases, you might want to, pay for some content somewhere, do some IoT payments or whatever. For that, we don't need it. We do
Right.
KYC on all the merchants that we have, because there we also, expect larger volumes, because obviously more people pay there. And we also run some other services for the merchants where this is required, through sort of not the money exchange law, but more because we also act as a fiduciary for our merchants.
I see. So this is kind of like you mitigate the risk of having this huge account inside Centi, so you check them, right? But for smaller account, right, it really like
Well,
not a risk for you, right?
we're getting a little bit into the weeds here because I don't like the word account because what Centi has no power of disposal over assets for our Centi app users. The app is a user interface to your own wallet, right? You can take that wallet somewhere else anytime, write your own software, I don't know, load it somewhere else which supports compatible standards. But essentially, yes, the bank guarantee is there to ensure that, essentially it's for regulatory purpose. It insures you, but the regulatory benefit of having the bank guarantee is that the token is exempt from securities regulations, meaning that it counts like money, like a foreign currency, like cash, sort of regulatory wise, which means also these limits and so on apply to it. If your token is actually a security, then you have a total different type of regulation you need to care for. I give you an example. So Centi has merchants, right? And let's say you buy a pair of new glasses at one of our merchants, sunshades, right? You buy those. What we do is, we provide the merchant the technology so he can collect your money onto his wallet, right? But now downstream, every night, we take that digital money out of the merchant's wallet and forward it to Centi in order to exchange it for money on the bank account. So let's say the merchant collected 100 Swiss francs in stablecoin, and now we are taking those 100 francs and exchange those for the merchant for money on the bank account. We take a small fee there, right? That's also how we earn money. Now, if your token counts as a security, suddenly that makes Centi a securities dealer. And that is a very, very high bar in regulation-wise. That means it's almost like getting a banking license, or how we're doing it right now with the bank guarantee and the token counting as a payment token for the regulator. It's a currency exchange. And currency exchange is, not as heavily regulated because, whenever you have securities, there is all these questions about, how to protect the investor, how to ensure that everyone holding or having or buying the security knows about involved risks and things like that. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. I have more questions, but I don't want to be
Yeah, please
greedy at
bring
the
them on.
moment.
I mean, I love to
Bring it.
go into these details. I hope for the viewers it will also be interesting because, of course, there are a lot of details, if you start drilling down.
I'll give it
Yes,
to
indeed.
Rory first.
Thank you. Yes, so I was just enjoying perusing your website. We have that at www.centi.ch. So Centi is spelt CENTI, and that is at .ch. So is that .ch indicative of being from Switzerland? Is that your tag?
Yes, .ch. You would find that most Swiss companies have a .ch domain. CH stands for Confederatio Helvetica, which means the Swiss Confederation in Latin. And for some reason, this CH also, if you have, you have the CHF, so the Swiss franc, it also comes from this. You have CHE being the country code, ISO 3-letter country code for Switzerland. So you find this CH a lot if you're traveling in Switzerland or have anything to do with Swiss companies and so on.
Fantastic. Yes. And so Switzerland is for, gosh, let's say at least 100 years, an epicenter of the financial system with banks and also with investment focus taking place there. I know that just even someone that is my friend that got into this investment industry ended up living there in Switzerland. And even the Bitcoin Association has the headquarters now in Zug. And then you were there in Zurich, which I think everyone is well aware is a place that is ripe with investment knowledge and wisdom. We've all heard of a Swiss bank account, right? It's great. Swiss
Yeah,
bank
depends in
account.
which, in which context you heard of it, but yeah. I
Exactly.
think I know what you're getting at.
Right. So Swiss bank accounts are known for their anonymity, right?
Well, that's actually not, not true anymore. So the Swiss Bank Secrecy Act was basically what allowed in the past for people to have so-called number accounts. So where there was just, you could open a number account, and whoever had the right, sort of papers could access the account, but the bank would know itself who the account necessarily belonged to. But this is no longer the case actually in Switzerland. And also, if you follow this, some of the Swiss banks had to pay quite hefty fines in the US for helping people to evade taxes, which is illegal. And so we're talking about fines of several $billion that had to be paid. And when that happened, a lot of rethinking in Swiss politics, mostly, potentially also with the bankers, can't really tell for sure, have been happening. And Switzerland now has so-called white money strategy. So we want to know, sort of, you also have the typical source of funds checks, proof for source of funds, and all these AML regulations that from elsewhere. I mean, it's not like it was super Wild West or something 20 years ago. It wasn't like, that, but there were definitely some some practices which were shady and, at least in other states, illegal. And these practices are now no longer conducted, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm not a banker, so,
Right.
can't really speak
Of
for
course.
them.
Wow. Well, I was not aware of all of that. So that's very good. Now, it sounds like they might be also a great place, a great market for blockchain, as in the Bitcoin blockchain, because it does enable both transparency as well as privacy at the same time for users.
Yes.
So, from your knowledge, having led the meetups there, the Bitcoin meetups, Bernhard, do you see Bitcoin as an ultimate infrastructure, or do you see it more as a complementary structure within the already existing fiat systems?
Well, at the moment, sort of course, as a business owner, for us, it's a very relevant infrastructure because much of our business circles around this infrastructure. Although honestly, our business itself is pretty much infrastructure agnostic. So whether it would be Bitcoin SV or another blockchain that actually scales, is stable, and brings all these properties, that wouldn't really matter for us. But this was just a blockchain that we chose because when we made those decisions, we saw this commitment to these factors that are important for us. Now, as a sort of Bitcoiner with a Bitcoin heart, I would say, yeah, I would love to see this being sort of a crucial part of the infrastructure, sort of across the country. But I think it will be much more complementary infrastructure. So for certain things like supply chain, like payments, like, some data applications. But I don't think everything just, flat out gets better with a blockchain, or if you add Bitcoin to it, or, of course, a lot of people have done that in the past. It's been a huge buzzword, Bitcoin and blockchain. So, I don't know, from consultancies to big corporates, everyone has thrown in the word somewhere in some report, in some press release. But we're quite far away still from actually replacing core infrastructure with Bitcoin, or even from sort of enhancing it. I think we're closer to enhancing some core infrastructure with Bitcoin, but sort of replacement question is it desired? I'm pretty sure Bitcoin is very suitable to replace quite a few systems which are, still from the 60s and 70s, which are pretty inefficient. But these industries that use these systems most heavily are very, very unagile. They're heavily regulated and so on. So talking about, SAP systems in production lines, in quality control lines, or we use those systems when I worked at Roche. Heavily regulated diagnostics business. Banks use systems from, way from the past. And the reason is that these are validated, and these companies guarantee them 20 years of data retention. Bitcoin isn't even around yet for 20 years, and it's still that the entire space is still a little bit wild, right? So these big corporates, they might not trust in those systems as much today. And I actually think Centi can really do its part by building on that system, but we don't show it that much to the outside. We're not, you'll probably see more and more in Centi.app that people can always use BSV, but let's say you have zero balance, we won't even show BSV necessarily anymore, because we really want, just users, consumers using that system, using the actual benefits. We want to bring those benefits to people without sort of evangelizing Bitcoin on them. That's something we've tried for years and years and years, and maybe that would have worked at some point. But let's say you're an evangelist that wants to evangelize Bitcoin use, and you take someone and say, hey, come to this meetup with us, you'll meet a lot of fun people. You might actually realize that your friend now met a lot of people that are infighting and disagreeing and having different thoughts on things. And so that's not really a super compelling sort of community to join, because you're like, okay, this guy says, Ethereum and everything else sucks, and this guy says this, and how am I supposed to make sense without actually going into these nitty-gritty details that people are discussing? So that's a bit how I see it, and that's how I think trust in those systems will really come from these enterprise applications where we use blockchain as plumbing, and then you can always later come and say, well, did you actually know since 2 years, this company is actually running service XYZ or application XYZ on this blockchain, peer-to-peer, sort of a true Web3 environment, all these things, and you can say, and you have the proof. Where if
proof of work.
People on Bitcoin itself, it's much harder.
I like the idea. Yeah. I like the idea that your project is like utility-driven project than the name of the technology behind it, because some people just like ice cream. They don't want to know how they create the ice cream. So something like that.
Or it's vegan or it's not vegan. Other people just say, oh, it's sweet and it's cold and that's exactly what I need now, right?
Yes. And I think that's how I totally agree. That's how we need to like create our contents for the ecosystem. So then we can approach, more users in a sense that they will not be afraid of what it is. They just they want it because they need it, right? And they can use it easily, seamless, right? So I can see as well, checking on the merchant side, I can see here that you can actually be part of the Web3 space. If I am a business in Web2, I can easily integrate my business into Web3 if I put my company or my store shop into partnership with Centi. So how does it work? Like, how can I add my shop to be in the merchant side?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. First, I have to say that currently we sell merchants, we serve merchants in Switzerland and Denmark, because that's where we have freedom to operate. We're, of course, extending that. Our plan is clearly to serve the entire European Union once the MiCA regulation comes into force by the beginning of 2025. And of course, we're also planning for other regions, and to basically Centi really wants to become a global payment network. But you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere, show it works, then find the right partners and things in other jurisdictions. If you want to become a merchant, then you can just write to us, and basically we will go through an onboarding process with you, similar to what you might be knowing from other companies that process payments for you. or actually in our case, we collect payments for you. We don't process them, but for you as a merchant, that doesn't really matter that much. And that's it. You'll get an account to our Centi web portal that is for merchants, where you get access to dashboard, where you get access to your wallet, your history of the wallet. You get access to create spaces in there as well. And within those spaces, you can define products, you can define cashiers, but you don't need all that. So each customer has a little bit different needs. One might say, hey, I'm selling through WooCommerce. So here you go, take our WooCommerce plugin. Another one maybe wants to create their own implementation. Okay, here we go. Here's our API documentation. Another one might say, hey, I'm already a merchant at one of your partners, such as, for example, Payrex. They can just, select the tick mark, all done. So there is different ways to integrate depending on what you need. You need it for e-commerce, you need it for point of sales. Who are your partners already? Which cashier system do you work with? And so on and so forth. And we'll happily consult and find the best solution. And if the solution for you isn't there yet, then we'll put it in our backlog and get it done for you.
Awesome. That's perfect. I'm imagining, I'm very positive that, in the future, if I open Centi in the Philippines, merchants will, pop up that are available in my country.
I really hope so. Yes, I hope that's going to be the case one day. Absolutely.
Yes. All right.
And
thank you.
Bernhard, how are you different from Centi?
So that's a good question. I mean, we obviously have a lot of things in common. Centi, I know these guys for a while, and I've known them from obviously before we founded Centi. They're also all about payments, powered by BSV. I think how they differ is they currently don't do integrations kind of directly into merchants, meaning that I can go and sort of pay with my BSV. I think you can do certain things like top up your phone or your electricity account. And of course, you can buy a lot of vouchers for different things. And actually, in rural areas, they seem to be quite present, is what I heard last. And and the two systems are also compatible. That's the nice thing about building on open standards such as Bitcoin. If somebody wants to send some money from Centi.app to Centi, they can do that, at least as long as it's in BSV. Where they differ is that they don't work with a stablecoin yet, as far as I'm concerned. So they basically still work in native BSV for the most parts, which of course sometimes comes with its challenges, I assume. They, however, have very awesome cash and mobile money and banking off-ramps in Africa and also in South America. And maybe you've seen that we are partnering with Centi in order to leverage that we have a lot of great on-ramps for the money in Switzerland, and they have a lot of great off-ramps. And together we're going to create a remittance product because Switzerland is one of the biggest sources of remittance payments globally, $35 billion annually. That's 3 times as much as the entire UK. And so it's a huge remittance source country. And there is also a lot of people here in Switzerland that still want to use cash for these remittance payments. And since since the Centi app can be topped up at the Swiss Post Office with cash, that is actually a really good option to dive into that.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's exciting news of the interoperability.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's exactly, what's so cool about this ecosystem, because we're all, not everyone is building on, let's say, every same standard, but the standard of a BSV payment, that's definitely a, defined standard. And so, we can work with these things. We can integrate modules from each other and sort of help each other to grow bigger and grow beyond, what the ecosystem size is today. And my very passionate opinion about this is that, this pie needs to grow bigger. It's way, way, way too early that I would say, Centi and Centi were somehow, competition and whatnot. Well, maybe we are in some ways, maybe we talk to same investors or I don't know what, but both of these companies can profit so much from working together. And suddenly, you have one company serving mostly South Africa, you have another company mostly serving Switzerland, and now you start combining some of the features of the two, and suddenly you can build an entire new product to remit money from Switzerland to Sub-Saharan Africa, and way, way, way more. We also, I've seen this at the conference. You guys talked about the conference before. I've talked to so many people, and we keep learning from each other. So many discussions I had with people at the conference were around, well, how do you solve this problem? How do you do this? Well, which service provider do you like best for XYZ? And then we exchange this information and make sure that we're not going down a path we might have to backpedal or backtrack from.
Right.
Amazing.
I also saw. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. What were you thinking, Chris?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, with what he mentioned about collaborating with Centi and other wallets, right? I just have a question, because if you're looking at this roadmap to collaborate with other wallets, and then you initially have this guaranteed backup from big bank, are you looking at Centi to be a sort of like a CBDC? Because as I've heard and studied, a CBDC works differently from one country to another, right? So what do you think about that?
So we're never gonna be a CBDC because that would really involve the government getting directly involved in issuing the token, which is not the case. We sometimes say we're the closest to a CBDC because we actually have a bank guarantee where if you look at Tether or USDC or some of these other stable coins, I mean, they all have nice reports and they say they're transparent and everything, but some of them aren't really audited or well, they don't have a guarantee. So case you had like maybe 2 months ago where suddenly USDC was trading at 98 cents or maybe even 85 cents or 89 cents, can't remember, because a lot of our money is in Silicon Valley Bank. And of course, nothing has absolute security. So even a stable coin that is backed by Swiss bank guarantee, there is of course scenarios, where banks can fail and all that. However, if you compare the stable coins that are out there, algorithmic stable coins that are managed by so-called decentralized autonomous organizations and whatnot, I mean, if I'm the client, I want to know who is the issuer and what guarantees do I have. Now, you could always say it could be more perfect, it could be better, maybe the government should issue it itself. Well, yes, but that's sort of the best we can do in the private sector today. But of course, what we want to become and would like to, and we're also talking to various people, is a go-to source for people that need, for some reason, their own stable coin for their own project, be it maybe in another currency than Swiss franc, or also people that want advice on, they want to be the issuer themselves, but they want maybe advice on how to do it technically or use some of our systems or part of our systems to do that. That's also another option. People can work together with us.
Wonderful.
Closest to CBDC. Nice.
Well, that's what I say. Yeah, it's kind of like, look, if you look at stable coins, people usually talk about 3 categories there. They say, well, the lowest, so the highest risk is the algorithmic stable coin, right? These are like, Terra Luna and many others that failed, where you basically have some sort of bot that sort of trades and should ensure that the portfolio always has at least the value of so many dollars. Now the problem with that is that that all works nice maybe in theory, but when there is times of market turmoil, some of these exchanges just turn off or they hold trading or so, and so your bot can enter all the orders at once. If it can't trade, then it cannot sell or buy, and it cannot make those guaranteed profits that it wanted to make, and then the whole system can collapse, which basically happened there. And then there is stable coins which I also don't really consider stable coins, that would be called wrapped stable coins. So this is when you, let's say, want to have Ethereum on BSV, and you would say, well, somebody, securitizes those Ethereum, and we issue those on BSV, and now people can use Ethereum on BSV. Well, since Ethereum and BTC and many others aren't really stable or much stable themselves, it's a question. Yeah, I call them wrapped coins, but some people would call these stable coins as well. And then there is, fiat-backed stable coins, which were, getting more into the real stable coin sector. That's something like USDC or Tether, where you really have a claim against the company of $1 or €1 or whatever. And we say, well, we kind of open a fourth category, which is fiat guaranteed. So it's not only fiat backed, and you have this claim against the company, but you even have a guarantee that if this company does not fulfill your claim for whatever reason, you have a guarantee from a bank. And then the next really be CBDC, where you have basically a guarantee for your money from the state itself, where, but this then raises again the question, well, what guarantee do I actually have if I have 10 francs? The only real guarantee is that I can pay my taxes in with those 10 francs. But, that's getting into the more philosophical question about, what money is and what it is not.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
And have you used tokens before? I mean, it sounds like stable coins are a form of tokenization.
Yes. So personally, I've used tokens on Bitcoin since maybe 2012, 13. I can't remember. So at the time, there were so-called colored coins. I didn't really have many of these, but there was a protocol which came out, which is called Counterparty, which is very similar to today's sort of layer 2 coins or op return based data coins that you also see on BSV. And these tokens that I owned were trading card games for a game. And so, people started to experiment with tokens very early on, or even at Centi before we issued the stable coin. We, of course, did various test runs. We also did a launch event where we, the ticket to the launch event was a token. Then there was like a special promotional currency that whoever, sort of redeemed the ticket with us at the counter at the entry of the club received $100 in this, in this token. Then they could use those to pay at the bar. And then we also issued some commemorative tokens and so on. So, issuing a token is not that hard. I mean, you basically select the framework, or in our case, we also help develop a framework. But there are many things out there if you just want to issue a token. What's much harder is issue a token that is truly meaningful, that people really want, that people really give value to, because it does have value. Issuing token as such is simple.
And what is the difference between a token and a stable coin?
A stable coin is I would say, a specific type of token. In our case, it's a payment token that is one-to-one backed by the Swiss franc. So technically, I mean, we do it at Centi, we differentiate between sort of tokens which most people will probably refer to as fungible tokens, meaning tokens that are, like cash, or like every token is the same, right? So in case of the stable coin, I don't really care whether, the coin comes from there or whatever. It's just, it's valid, it goes back to the right origin, it was properly issued, and so on. So it's fine. But then, of course, people also do what they call NFTs, which is basically just a serialized form of token, where you say, let's issue 10,000 of these tokens, but let's give them a sort of serial number to make them collectible and make them unique, so to speak. And then there is, of course, tokens which are much more like, where you can append data over time. Let's say maybe you guys know the game Crypto Fights, where, maybe your fighter or your character is sort of a token that has a history of fighting, and defined by its history, there is your skill levels, and then maybe then you even attach weapons or other things to that, and kind of combine tokens into this kind of Christmas tree that for itself you might be traded together or separated out again. So stablecoin is really just a special form of token. And in our case, what's important maybe to mention is that it's suitable for micropayments, which is really also why there is a demand for for a new stablecoin. Because let's say Tether or USDC or something similar would be super quick and super cheap to transact, then we as Centi might have thought, well, what, let's build on that, or let's use that or something. But there is all these stable coins out there are made for arbitrage trading. They are made for people who need to move money from exchange A to exchange B in order to profit from a market opportunity, from market inefficiency. So basically all these stable coins are there to create more market efficiency and better sort of price finding across all the markets globally, which is a valid application, but it's just really not the application that the Centi franc was designed to do. It could be used for that fully. There's nothing holding it back, but we don't advertise it for that. We didn't issue it for that. We didn't think there was a need for such a token because these tokens are already there. We do, however, think there is a need for a guaranteed token, a token that's suitable for micropayments. And last but not least, since Centi is all about disintermediating, you can also buy and sell this token directly with us. So you don't need to you need to be special customer who owns $200 million in order to interact with us directly. But actually you can only buy it on an exchange or buy it with a third party. You can, your claim that you hold with this token is valid, no matter what. It's valid against us, and you can come and redeem this claim. Of course, the purpose is that you go and then pay your friends, buy something in the shop, actually use the token for commerce. But people only trust it to use it for commerce if they know, well, I can also get my money back.
Right. I love that. The power of the individual. So the individual, let's say myself here in the States, eventually one day, as the market opens up beyond Denmark and Switzerland into the EU, and then further into the United States and beyond to the Philippines and around the world, we can then use this service that you're providing with Centi. But currently, as it is, collaborating with Centi, a retail investor, let's say an individual, a small business owner in Africa, they can immediately have the access into the market, it sounds like, with what you're providing, and connect with
these merchants would probably work with Centi directly. But what I failed, I'm really glad you mentioned this now, because what I failed to say before is that what we also have, and we can already have merchants use globally, is we have sort of a reduced offer for merchants that is on our side less heavy on the regulatory side, which everyone can already use. And that's basically where you just use Centi as a tech service to collect BSV or tokens onto your own wallet. And the entire downstream service of we exchange this money automatically for you, we act as your fiduciary to do that. You don't have to do anything with it. That's basically the offer that is most compelling for merchants, because hands off, no change of accounting procedures. I don't need to learn anything. Super simple to integrate. But for everyone that's already in the BSV space and wants to say, hey, you know what, I want to accept this stablecoin, I want to accept BSV at my shop, they can already use today the Centi system. They should contact us, we'll help them. We have an invoice type that's called external, where you basically provide the address you want to collect to directly with the invoice request. And then we just basically collect that money for you onto this address that you provide. With the API call, we let you know if it's paid. If it's there, you can use our entire infrastructure to make sure the payment is valid and duly, it's not, you're not getting scammed, you're not accepting fake money or whatever, and you have all these benefits, but you're basically operating on your own wallet that you provided. And so if you know some people in the Philippines, in the US, wherever in Australia, let me know, because they can use that until we are there with our full service.
Lovely, yes. And I can integrate that with either my Centi wallet, or what about others like Hand Cash?
It doesn't matter. I mean, with Handcash, we are fully compatible also with the Paymail sending and receiving of transactions. And in Handcash, you can also say, hey, I need a legacy BSV address. Yeah, you can get that, write that down, and use that as your wallet. You could use Electrum SV. You could use, sort of any other wallet where you can sort of access a public address, Bitcoin address, or Paymail, basically.
And what about the greater market that's still very popular, such as Doge or BTC or Ethereum? Could folks that say have a business set up with a wallet on one of those areas, could they also integrate using your service?
Not today, for well, mainly two reasons. When we founded Centi, we decided to go deep on one chain and not wide. So there are already companies like Coinify or like BitPay or similar that you might know, where you can, accept Dogecoin, BTC, Ethereum, and so on. It's very expensive to maintain infrastructure for a lot of these coins in parallel. And second of all, the way we do our payment acceptance and accepting zero confirmation payments securely and super fast, that is something that doesn't really work on other chains, or some of the other chains. So in this, if you check BitPay and you do a BTC payment, they still do it like we did it 10 years ago. They say, well, here's an address and you have to pay 0. So many BTC. You now have 15 minutes to make this payment and we'll monitor the chain. Yeah, and they monitor the chain. And, very often this would work. But what if I'm underpaying the network fees? What if I'm sending a payment, but it's a little bit too small? What if I'm overpaying? That you have all these edge cases that you need to care for, but you already broadcasted the transaction. It's already out there. So if somebody overpays, they have to send money back. If somebody underpays, they have to ask for more money. But then maybe the exchange rate already changed, right? If somebody doesn't pay enough fee, you don't know, well, will the payment actually go through or not? So can we accept it now or not? On BSV, since pretty much the beginning, we have done these payments with what we call BIP 270 at the time, and that's still a very popular standard that's still supported by many wallets, including Centi. But at Centi, we have developed this standard into something enhanced called DPP, Direct Payment Protocol. But let me first talk, and both of these protocols, they do the same thing. If I'm asking you to pay something, I'm letting you know what is my policy. I want an output of that many BSV, let's say in BSV for now, on that address. And the minimum fee requirement is this and this and this. So I have my policy. And then you actually hand me the signed transaction. So you hand the merchant the signed transaction. That has two benefits. First of all these underpayment, overpayment, and various other cases that could happen, they're excluded. Because if the payment doesn't meet the policy, I'll basically send it back and say, well, we're not going to broadcast that. We're not going to need that. Sorry, try something else. Like I'm handing you, a $100 bill back and saying, well, try something else to pay. For whatever reason, that doesn't work now. So we exclude all these cases. And secondly, since first of all, BSV miners adhere to the so-called first seen rule. So whichever transaction they see first, they commit to mining, and not the one that pays the higher fee or, whatever, which was a very payment toxic change that was introduced to BTC called replace by fee, where you could sort of replace a transaction in the mempool by, sort of altering the fee of it and so on, which is really bad for payment acceptance. So in BSV, you know that the miners will mine the transaction that they see first. Very, very valuable for payments acceptance. And secondly, since we broadcast this transaction on our side, on the merchant side, it's very, very hard for you to do a so-called double spend event. So double spend is where a user would pay me, And somewhere else on the network, down in Australia or wherever, maybe the Philippines, they would inject another transaction into the network which competes with that one and sort of pays themselves. So they want to sort of pull the rug and take the money away from me or after I've already accepted it. If you want to do that, you need to have very meticulous timing, because if you do it too early, then I will never accept your payment, because I say, well, that competes with another transaction. Sorry, you've already spent this money. You can't spend it again. If you're doing it too late, well, then your transaction will never be accepted anymore, because miners have already seen my transaction. So by shifting that actually the recipient side of the transaction broadcasts it to the network, the potential attacker doesn't know our timing. So he doesn't know. When you broadcast it yourself, you could time and say, well, exactly then, and then 2 milliseconds later or whatever, I'm going to broadcast the competing transaction here. You can't really do that if you don't know how long is the merchant going to wait till he cashes the check, right? Sort of in that analogy. And that makes BSV very special blockchain for doing payment acceptance on. And in other blockchains where you're basically waiting for the network to tell you that something arrived on your address, that's much less suitable for payments.
It's a
I
first
hope that
come,
wasn't
first
too
served
confusing.
basis.
Very clever.
Yes.
Now, I did have another question. In America, there's a point of sale that I think is rather popular. It's called Clover. Have you heard of it before?
I have not, unfortunately.
Ah, okay, yes. So it's maybe just regionally popular. I'm not sure, but I have used it. And it is a user interface, where you have all of your products for sale, and then it also is processing the payment. And every so often, there will be sales folks that come into the shop and say, oh, we have this alternative resource for you, a payment processing system with 0 fees. And they give me the flyer, and I think, really, I wonder how they do that. But the thing is that a business owner is not going to make a change. When a business owner has made a decision, they're sticking to it for a really long time until there's some compelling reason for them to make a change. And also,
Yes,
a business owner is not going to spend more money. They're going to do everything they can to make the most of what they
save
have.
money.
Yes. And so even if the point of sale is not ideal or perfect, once it's implemented, then it tends to stay a long time. And even in my experience in the corporate world, as we're evaluating a new software resource, an investment into a software suite, we can go through many different options. And it really does take a long time for businesses to make a final decision and approve the sale of a new technology. So with that, how is Centi a point of sale that is competitive for say a shop? Is that really
Yep.
useful?
So there's various layers to the answer. So the first issue you talk about is a sort of, conservativeness of, once you have a system for, reason of either training or, buying new licenses or whatever it may be, you usually want to stay where you are and not change much unless there is like very big pressure. Now, those merchants we can address through the partners we already work with, such as, for example, Payrex, where they are a payment service provider that sort of aggregates all payment methods, Visa, MasterCard, Twint, Centi, and so on, into one simple checkout or API. There are about 50,000 merchants in Switzerland using that. And for these people, it's super easy. They can just turn on Centi with a click of a mouse, and that's it, and they get the money exactly the same way as before. They don't even have to, essentially they wouldn't even have to know they accept Centi and could accept it.
Great.
And so on the point of sales device, that's also of course true. If you come as a new payment startup and you say, hey, exchange your point of sale terminal. They're like, yeah, but I need to accept Visa and MasterCard and debit cards, and obviously they need to do that. I mean, we at Centi, we don't propose that tomorrow everybody exchanges all their infrastructure they have already. We have to make sure that we are accessible, right? That we are where the merchant already is and wants to be. But on these point of sales devices, it's actually what we're seeing is that the trend is clearly towards Android-enabled terminals. So these are little devices that look like a smartphone, pretty much. They're a bit thicker in some cases. They have all the necessary security hardware for chip reading, card reading, PIN entry, and so on. They have, kind of like two computers inside. One is a completely hardened encapsulated system that is only like for the card reading and all that. And then they have a second system which runs Android. And on that one, you can run other applications, QR code-based payment solutions, and so on and so forth, which do not need all the security standards that you have with the card industry. And these are getting more and more popular. I see them more and more. And it's, of course, on those, it's much simpler to integrate. And then you can also tell the customer, well, you can just turn it on. Now, in regards to other incentives, this is actually where we at Centi have very, very good arguments. So if somebody's willing to at least listen to us, or look how we could integrate them easily into their current system, they have a lot of advantages as merchant. First of all, much lower fees. That's already like a no-brainer. No, as you said, nobody wants to pay more. Everybody wants to pay less. And we are convinced that we will see a race to the bottom in the payments industry, that the current oligopoly that we have will not be able to sort of stay on the throne forever. They will have to either also get cheaper, or they will get replaced at some point by other options. So first of all, cheaper fees, but then also what is very important for merchant is their working capital. With many credit cards, you actually get your money like 2 or 3 weeks later. Like if you're running a business that has higher risks, the credit card company might even hold back some of your money for a few months even, just in case somebody would file a chargeback for some of these payments. And there we come to the third reason, and that's really the huge advantage on the merchant side for accepting cash, digital cash, is no chargebacks. If there is a problem between the consumer and the merchant, let's say you're not happy with the product, well, that's where the consumer and the merchant need to start interact and find the right solution. What's happening today is that the consumer is used to being, able to sort out everything through his credit card company, basically saying, well, I wasn't happy. Well, did you try to contact the merchant? Well, I couldn't really be bothered. Let's just ask for my money back, okay? And this is a huge, huge hassle for merchants. It creates a lot of indirect costs. So these costs come on top to the payment fees you're actually paying. And it's a waste of time, because you actually need to react to all these cases as a merchant. So let's say it's even $10. You could say, well, okay, give that consumer the $10. But if you don't actually answer these chargeback requests, you might come into a category where it's like, oh, well, they're just trying to book some credit cards, and whenever asked for some money back, they give it back. But they didn't ever really show a delivery record. They didn't even show, that, the product was actually received and all these things. And that's really a huge, huge hassle for merchants, that basically the money they accept can be pulled away from under their feet up to 180 days later. So just imagine you're a car salesperson. You're selling a car for 20 grand to someone. You're paying your salary. You're doing all these things. You received your money from the credit card company. Now, 4 months later, the person that purchased the car says there was a quality issue with the car. They want their money back. They file a chargeback. What will happen is the first thing the card company will do is they will block for $20,000 from your payouts of basically the sales you just made maybe this week or last week. So suddenly you have even more working capital that's bound. Maybe you'll get your money in the end. You'll fight for it. You'll show the car was fine. I delivered it. It was as specified, and whatever the consumer might try. So that argument works magic on the merchant side. We, of course, have to also ensure that people that use Centi and use digital cash, they also get an incentive to do so, because for some payments, it might actually be cool that you have a free travel insurance, when you book a flight to New Zealand or something like that. I don't need it, however, if I'm buying a chewing gum or, some sweets at the kiosk or something like that. So what we want to achieve at Centi, to finish this, is we want to achieve that we have a fair payments market, meaning that these fees are also becoming transparent. Today, all these payment companies are basically forbidding the merchant to discriminate any means of payments against another. So in some cases, this went as far as that the credit card lobby wanted to prevent a merchant from giving a cash discount to a consumer, because the merchant was like, okay, if I can't if I can't charge something extra for the credit card, well, I can give a cash discount. Well, they didn't like that, of course. And this is where it gets really interesting for Centi, because just in the past 12 months, we've seen so many developments in the right direction in this regard. Canada-wide, each cafe owner, each hairdresser, each merchant can now charge 2.5% on each credit card purchase that a consumer makes. A small consortium of merchants fought up to the highest court to get that through. In Germany, we're seeing the cartel, sort of the federal cartel oversight entity going against PayPal, saying, well, this practice that you forbid merchants to charge extra fee for PayPal, this will no longer stand. And this is quite ironic, because for the past 20 years or so, consumer protection agencies have actually defended these structures, because they said, well, let's assume, the most common or, sub-common intellect level person in our society, they have they have a euro in their pocket, a euro on their bank account, and a euro on their PayPal account. Now, if suddenly this euro buys you less than this euro, they get confused, right? They can't rely on the euro anymore. They don't know what is a euro, what does it buy me. So therefore, no payment method can be discriminated. Of course, this practice allowed the payment industry to mask and disguise all their payment fees in the consumer prices, and making sure that all other payment methods that are cheaper are basically cross-subsidizing their expensive payment methods. And now these consumer protection agencies have it's clicked with them that, well, they're basically protecting monopolists that way. And that's maybe not really a good idea to reach the best result for the consumer, which now makes them open to say, well, actually, it's a market, and maybe in a market you need to be able to discriminate, also economically. Maybe the credit card has the best, ease of use. You just tap it. That's awesome. It works fine. But at what price does it come? Now, if you as a consumer suddenly have to pay 2.5% more for this tapping experience versus using a Centi app and paying, that's where you can drive change. If nobody can actually see a financial result of their consumer behavior, well, you'll never drive change.
That is so interesting.
Now, with all the payments and stuff, sorry. Yeah, I just have this question because, stablecoin sounds very fascinating, especially Centi. Stablecoins. I just wonder, I just want to play a bad cop here. May I know if there's any disadvantages of using stablecoins compared to the traditional fiat currency?
Well, I think I mentioned some of them before, that let's say you're a consumer and you love to be in this world where you're fully pampered and you can ask for your money back 180 days later. That's probably where you'd rather use a credit
Very
card
manual.
than Centi. But if you're a consumer that wants to be in full control of their money, wants to ensure that whatever payment is done, you actually authorize it, and it's just deducted or written to your credit line just because somebody has your details. If you like to be private with your transactions and not share I don't know what personal details to buy chewing gum, then you're right with Centi. And on the other side as well, as a merchant, you're right with Centi. If you don't like chargebacks, if you want to be sure that you get your money when you actually deliver the product or accepted a payment. But I don't think we will see there will only be one provider in the future. I mean, we will now first see more providers pushing into the payment market, and then it will sort of consolidate at some point. But I'm pretty sure that we're in 10 to 20 years from now, it will be more diverse than it is today. Like even in the past, it was more diverse. Like when I was a kid or an adolescent, there were some merchants that would only accept Visa, others would only accept, maybe MasterCard and Amex and so on. Today, it's clear if you accept cards, you need to accept Visa, MasterCard. Otherwise, you're like losing so many potential customers and revenue and so on. So it's almost become one thing, credit card, and so it's sort of grown together, and you have almost less diversity now in the payment landscape than 20 years ago. But I think we'll see more diversity again because, I think this is great for the investors and shareholders, of course, of a company like Visa. But for, let's say you are actually a merchant, it's an insult. It's an insult to you how much profit they're making. They're making 70% profit, 70. So just imagine as a merchant, your revenue and 70% of that is profit. And as as a restaurant owner, as a clothing store owner, as a food truck owner or whatever, you're fighting very, very hard to even try and get to 10%. And we're all paying that. We are all paying that every day, every time we use that convenience, tap the card, pay the flight, whatever we're doing, we're paying for that. And the products could be cheaper if we didn't pay for that.
Yes, that
Can I say,
is.
yeah, sorry. Can I
No,
say, like,
that's
yeah, is a stablecoin immune to risk of hacking and cyber attacks? Just to straightforward
We have a
question.
very deliberate risk notice together with our stablecoin. So please read the full terms on what the risks are or what risks we see. Nothing is risk-free. But hacking sort of into your wallet is going to be as difficult as it is today, meaning that the better you protect your wallet, the less you share any details with anyone else, the better your phone is protected and so on, the better your money is also protected. I doubt that the stablecoin as such, sort of as a whole thing, will be hacked. There has been an extensive security review on the token protocol that the stablecoin runs on, and there has been also extensive security reviews on Centi systems that we use to issue the coin and that our merchants use and so on. But nothing, whoever tells you something is guaranteed risk-free, they're probably lying. And even if they give you a guarantee, there could be the case that, they go bankrupt and then the guarantee, isn't worth anything anymore. So whoever tells you it's guaranteed risk-free, be very, very careful, because if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yes.
But it's all about, I think, so coming back to this risk policy, it's very important that people can assess the risks themselves. So in our case, you can actually go and check out this bank, you can check their balance sheet, you can check their strategies, what they're doing in the market, where this money is. So you at least have this transparency, and you can go and do a proper risk assessment, which is very difficult if you don't have the transparency, if people don't tell you where is the money, what's happening with, how do they invest it, what happens if I come, and what happens in case of bank run, what happens if you go bankrupt, and you don't have these answers, then it's of course much more difficult to do the risk assessment.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we still need to make some due diligence to whatever account, whatever wallets, or whatever financial entities that we're engaging in. Right?
Absolutely. I think, however, it's also important to mention, of course, some people might choose to, I don't know, hold a lot of this stablecoin, right? But the main purpose is really the payments and utility. And, like with everything, security is an economic thing. And security often has to be balanced against ease of use. So if you're securing your household money, like Fort Knox, then, well, first of all, you have a lot of costs for the security, probably more than your household money is. And second of all, you have a lot of trouble accessing your money because you're like shutting it off even from yourself so much that, you can't readily pay something with it. And now on the other side is, of course, your sort of app for casual payments, where you pay 50 cents, pay $100 or something to actually make a payment. And this always needs to be balanced very carefully, of course. The cool thing about our stablecoin is, shall you come to the conclusion that the user interface we provide with the Centi app does not, for whatever reason, is not, the security that you like, well, you can, choose another wallet app, or you can even write your own, because everything's based on open standards. There is no proprietary part in this stablecoin. Of course, the claim is still valid against Centi. That you cannot sort of have a distributed claim or a decentralized claim, because that's essentially meaning you don't have a claim against anything or anyone. So in case of a stablecoin and providing this stability, you want someone you have a claim against. You definitely want someone where you can go and say, hey, I have a claim against you, please fulfill this claim. But the token itself, the technology, the interpretation of the token, the checking whether it's valid, the transactions, all of that happen completely independent from Centi, and that's just Bitcoin script. It's a bit sort of a special transaction, a special Bitcoin transaction, but the Bitcoin miners, they care for, whether the money was already spent before or not, which transaction came first, and all these security features that you already know from Bitcoin itself.
And Bernhard, I see here on your website that you have a tab for developers specifically.
Yes.
So what is it that you're seeking? Why do you have this tab?
So this tab is geared towards either people from the ecosystem who would like to, actually on this website, there was also an image at some point, and I don't know why the image is gone, I have to check. But if you click, if you scroll down and then you go to click here, where it says that below the black writing, how to use our API, below that, there, go up again.
Yes.
A little bit up.
Okay.
Some more.
Yes.
Some more.
Oh, yes.
And now there is, this one, this link. Click this link.
Documentation.
Yeah, so it was a bit clear. I think the image got lost somehow, so I'll have to check that. But that's basically where you can see the documentation of our invoicing API. We also have a merchant API, which is like if you want to do more elaborate things. But basically just to collect payments, that's the API that people would use. And obviously, normally we help you with all of that. But, if you now see this podcast and you're like, hey, I really like that stablecoin, but I don't necessarily want to work directly with Centi or whatever. Well, first of all, you could build your own things, as we said, if you want to. But if you want it a little bit easier, you can use our API and basically use our services and get an API key from us and start collecting money. As I said, for example, even to your own wallet. Or you become a Centi merchant, then you can use even more features. And that is really geared towards two persona groups. One would be, BSV people who would like to build something using the stablecoin or integrate it somehow into their application. Or the second user group would clearly be developers of partner companies or merchants that we work with that, want to integrate it somehow into their own system without our help. And it's actually pretty easy to integrate it. So we've done a few integrations now into paywalls, into WooCommerce, into partner applications, and so on.
Fantastic. And what if someone just wants to experiment? Can they also click here and just play around?
Well, they should contact me. What I can do is I could give them a merchant account on our staging system, which is, sort of not bookkeeping relevant and sort of separate. and they could play there with, issuing their own tokens, loyalty points, tickets, vouchers, whatever it be, checking out our entire system, what they can do with it, how they can use it, how they can integrate. We also have web-based applications like, for small and mid-size events where they can have cashiers, for bars, ticket scanners. We actually have a lot of things in this merchant portal that we haven't really advertised yet to date. Also, the entire dashboard where you can see how many payments you collected. You can group those payments by cashier, by space they were collected in, or currency, or any other factors, and so on. So there is an entire sort of ecosystem part that not a lot of people have seen about Centi, which is really what our merchants use. And there is a lot of cool features. If somebody would like to organize an event such as a festival or an open air, and they want go digital, but they don't want to go and rent all these expensive hardware for card acceptance and then pay a lot of money every time somebody taps a card, they can basically run their entire event on our software. Also completely hardware independent, so even on their own tablets or mobile phones. And we can basically sort of outsource the entire card acceptance and so on to our app, where people would then sort of top up their Centi app to then use either the Centi franc or a specific event currency that the merchant could issue. And I say merchant, in this case, it's kind of an event host or something, but for us, they're all like merchants technically. So yeah, there is a lot of things, and if people are interested to experiment or to learn more about these features and want me to demonstrate them to them, they should contact me. My email is Bernhard@Centi.ch, and you can also reach us through support@Centi.ch.
Fantastic. And I wonder, were you able to connect at all or see the presentation of Robert Rice from Transmira?
Not yet this year. I was networking while that happened, so I'm eagerly awaiting, and maybe Chris can tell us if that happens anytime soon for all these videos coming out on YouTube.
Fantastic, because I just see with what you're offering on the event side, that could sync up well with the whole 3D experience offered by Transmira.
It could, yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's exciting the way that you have this puzzle that you put together, and this piece of the puzzle is beautiful in itself, and then you can connect it with the other pieces to make a broader scene.
Yeah, yeah, it's really a comparison with the internet itself, right? In the beginning, maybe many internet companies were like, oh, here it's just my website, how you can order pizza. And these days, some of the most valuable companies we have on this planet have to do with actually connecting different information sources and standardizing, so we can use certain data across different platforms or even industries. And basically the same we can do in Bitcoin, right? Sometimes you work with another company, then you have to maybe make some stuff a little bit compatible because they might do something a little bit different, but on the core layer, everything is compatible and can be made compatible. And that's also the cool thing about software, and having a software company is, well, anything can be achieved. It's all a matter of resources and time you put into it, but anything can be built, essentially, pretty much anything.
Rah, here we go. Well, thank you both for joining us and being in the moment together today. And
happy to be in the moment with you.
Thank you. Yes. We look forward to meeting up with you again soon and continuing this conversation. And anyone out there that is most interested in following up on the opportunities Bernhard has mentioned, please do send him an email at support@Centi.ch or at Bernhard@Centi.ch. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And please also try our app. You can download it from the App Store or the Play Store and give it a 5-star rating. If you're not giving it a 5-star rating, please let me know through this email, what you would like to see changed, what we can do better. We're really interested to learn from you. And we want as much feedback as possible and as many people as possible using Centi.
Yes. And Krez, how do you feel?
Yeah, this is a very juicy conversation about Centi. I watched the webcast you had with the other women of BSV, and that
Yep.
was intense, right? Um, but I'm everywhere, so I cannot finish one webcast. I need to be everywhere,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I
yeah,
sometimes tell people how, when I started with Bitcoin, you could essentially read every news article and every forum post that was posted about Bitcoin almost, right? And then at some
yeah,
point got out of hand. And in the beginning
yes,
of BSV, it was very similar. You could kind of see, okay, there's this company, this company, this company. Here somebody wrote a blog post, there's very little. And now there's so much material, people doing videos, podcasts, the BA, CoinGeek, and more and more coming in that I have no chance to keep up with everything. And there's so many apps that I'd like to try, or companies that I like to research, or things I'd like to watch, and I don't have the time. I don't have the time to watch it all. I
exactly.
couldn't work anymore if I would watch all that.
But the good thing with this is that you're able to like ask the question firsthand, because sometimes that question and simple question are not being asked, are not asked
Yes,
to that particular webcast, and we have different kind of audiences. Like some wants to have like a minor side, and some very technical, and some non-technical. But for me personally, I want to convert the language from a technical perspective and convert it to a non-technical perspective, because at the end of the day we want to have more users, right? The bloodline will be
absolutely.
users. And
And it's very
um
hard task to do.
yeah,
It's very hard task to do. And I have these discussions constantly at Centi, to be honest, because in our case, we don't only have to break it down, we also have to make sure we do not miscommunicate. And maybe
exactly.
you've seen some of these lawsuits and so on that are now going on against Binance and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Very hot.
often tweets are part of these lawsuits where some developer has said, "Hey, Ethereum is scarce, therefore it will go up in price. Here it is, your investment advice, no disclaimer, blah blah blah." And so when you start breaking down things and working with people that are professionals in breaking down things for the masses, that's awesome, because you can get your nerdy message to much wider population. But sometimes certain accuracy is left behind, and in financial services this can actually be a trap. So you need to be very, very careful, like what exactly you
Ask
communicate and
Switzerland.
how.
When it comes to financial and banking and rules and regulation, ask Switzerland. So yes, I feel you that we need to be very careful with all the statements that we deliver online. But I think this kind of webcast and questions, it allows the founders and creators to actually navigate some words out there and
Absolutely.
formulate and
And
to
it's
deliver
needed.
to
It's
our
absolutely needed, because we at Genti want to reach 98% of people and not 2% of people. And 98% of people have not done the same deep dives into technology, finance, risks, or whatever that some of us might have done. And so we need to be able to communicate in a short, concise, and simple manner.
yes.
And
And
that's not
also
always
this,
my biggest trait.
yeah, also we're trying to solve here the misconception, right? When I was just starting to understand what blockchain is, I thought I need to be a trader. This is a very honest approach, right? I thought I need to own an NFT, something like that. But this kind of things where it allows us to,
Please
exactly,
repeat
great.
that again about maybe you repeat that again, what you thought about NFTs and how you need to get in,
Yes.
because it was
Okay.
really
So
hard to understand.
when I tried to enter the blockchain space, so initially when you thought of tokens, coins, stable coins, you will thought that you'll think about of being involved in the trading ecosystem, because those kind of items. And then when you think of minting, NFT, this funny JPEGs and stuff, you will think that you need to own an NFT and you need to be in the marketplaces, right? So these are the misconceptions. Sometimes we don't need to have those items on hand. We just need to use the application to understand what it is. And this, I think, is something that we discussed earlier about being a utility driven um, project than a very technical driven project. We just need to
Yeah, and
use it, right?
in
And
parts it
dive
also
into it.
has to do with the mainstream media and how they report, like how they don't manage to separate at all, like blockchain from, DeFi and crypto hype. And of course they like to report on sort of big numbers, big crashes. So they always like, if there's a big Bitcoin crash, let's report about it. If there is like, the next Bitcoin hype, let's report about it. But the mainstream media would very seldomly report about, hey, here's this company that, really has a valid use case using the technology. That's like advanced stuff. Most mainstream media articles just basically promote these markets and the whole fear of missing out and all that. And so that's very
Correct.
natural that you would come into this space and think, well, what should I try? Obviously I should try trading something, because that's what it's all about, right? That's what they all write about. And winning money, making more money, finding someone else that pays more later, that's what it's all about.
Yes. So yeah, I'm so happy to like give my questions to you firsthand and understand what Senti is in depth. Like I happen to navigate the website as well and to understand what you do and what it means to be like a guaranteed or backed by Swiss Bank guarantee. So something
Yeah.
that really enlightens me, and you really shed light on that aspect, and I really appreciate the conversation. So Rory, are you still with us?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can hear you
we can
fine.
hear you.
Oh, lovely. Yes, so very good points. And yes, I have always had a very simple point of view as far as relating these advanced topics to everyday things that people might experience in their own neighborhood. So, as I listen back during editing and then even the premiering of you on YouTube and real world podcasts, I'll be able to continue to learn, because it's upon the second listening and third listening that I become more familiar with all the topics and I learn from the guest. So, Bernhard, you have really graced us today, and we're thankful to you for what you're doing and how you're innovating in the world on the leading edge, and also to continuously learn and interact with you as well throughout the process. And I hope we can have a lot more events where we do just this, we talk about it. And then maybe we could even have an app using party where we're all using the app somehow.
That's a
That's a
very
very
fantastic
fantastic
idea,
idea,
and
and
thank you
thank you
for
for
these
these
words.
words.
Happy to
To
join you
join you
again.
again.
Thank you. Well, from Zurich to the Philippines to Marietta, Georgia, we enjoy this moment together and look forward to being in the moment with you all again soon.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.